All right, and ta-da! Okay, so now we're live. So let's do a round of introductions. Just that one more time, so we're all still getting to know each other, and then we'll take it from there. Shayna is going to go first because it's Shayna's book today.
I figured. All right. So my name is Shayna Begay. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am sort of a writer, mostly just poetry, but really, I'm a rocket scientist in my real day job. So most of the time I'll just stick to that.
Fancy.
Yeah.
All right.
And yeah, but really, I chose this book honestly because of I've been trying to reach out into more of the world of contemporary Native American authors because I am Navajo. Grew up in the Southwest United States, went to school in Florida, and have been really curious about trying to learn more about different tribes other than my own. And so it's the real reason why I want to reach out, and I chose the Marrow Thieves because I wanted to try something new.
Awesome. Talia, why don't you go next?
I am what is referred to as a
auction. Sorry.
I have everything back there but a jacket. I'm a pre-successful author. I'm also pre-published. My name is Talia Shvari. That is my writing name. Domestic goddess of chaos. That is who I am.
Lovely. Bree, it's on you.
Hi, I'm Bree. I'm also a molecular biologist in my day job, but I identify as a writer at night, hoping one day to become successful. But it's fun. So, and happy to be here and discuss this book today.
Awesome. Well, hopefully anybody watching at this point already knows who the hell I am, because how did you get this link if you don't? I'm Kira Lexi. I'm a writer, an avid reader, living, working, breathing, writing in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is our book club, which we still don't have a name for. I've been playing with the name Book Cult because somebody told me a while ago that this is a cult because we meet at regular intervals to discuss the same general topic, which is books. And that's apparently all it takes to be a cult. So
I think you need to be getting rich to make it a cult. The cult leader usually has some monetary.
One day though, like cult leaders don't become rich overnight, do they?
No.
We've only had one meeting. This is only our second. We can
book cult to be.
I'm cool with calling us a book cult. Let's see if everybody else.
We need like a hand gesture or a prayer.
I don't know. I'm not Naruto.
We all kind of did something like this. So spirit hands,
Spirit jazz fingers.
Jazz fingers. Something.
Or like a page turn. Hi. Kind of.
So what I want to do before we jump straight into the book stuff, first we are missing 3 people. We're normally at least 7. First, happy anniversary to Gabriella, who is off on an anniversary weekend trip with her hubs. So I don't know if Gabriella is actually planning to check us on YouTube today and in the chat or what she's planning to do. But
yeah, she has better things to do.
Well, she's supposed to be driving, like she's in the passenger seat. So if she's not, she did say she'll try to like pop in for half an hour. I don't think it's gonna happen. I think she's gonna be enjoying herself, which is what she should be doing. But that's a thing. Kirsten also is supposed to be trying to check us in the chat when she has a chance at work. And I think Seidel may just like not be present today at all. She's stuck wherever she's stuck. And she did. It's really disappointing because I know she was really excited about this book. This was a heavy book. Walia, this book had this. I'm gonna say, Shay, if you don't want to start, I'd like somebody who is not me to start because I will not shut up. So somebody else start.
Don't we need like the book summary, right?
Oh yeah, shit! I was gonna read the blurb. I've got it open here. Okay.
Yeah, let's start there, and then we can.
Let's do it. So the Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline. I hope I pronounced that correctly. In a futuristic world ravaged by global warming, people have lost the ability to dream. And the dreamlessness has led to widespread madness. The only people still able to dream are North America's indigenous people, and it is their marrow that holds the cure for the rest of the world. But getting the marrow and dreams means death for the unwilling donors. Driven to flight, a 15-year-old and his companions struggle for survival, attempts to reunite with loved ones, and take refuge from the recruiters who seek them out to bring them to the marrow-stealing factories. If that doesn't sound terrifying. Hey, there's Kirsten. Also, anybody else who is viewing from the chat, please feel free to say hello, say hi, join in, make comments, make, I don't know, some bacchanal, whatever you'd like. Kirsten, I already mentioned to folks that you're going to be joining us from the chat because you're working, but definitely as much as you can, just dump all the words in. We want to hear from you since you can't be here on screen with us today. So that was our summary. She, go ahead, take it away.
All right, so I'll just make the comment again here that like I chose this book because I am Navajo, and I started a Native American book club at my work like some years ago, and it's actually kind of caught on. I'm pretty happy with it. I even have some of our executive members that are constantly asking me for the list on this, and so I'm constantly looking for new Native American authors and their voices to share. And so this author in particular, Cherie Dimaline, she is from the Métis tribe, which is a First Nations tribe up in Canada, which I know next to nothing about, which is awesome. But at the same time, she was also a professor for the Masters of Fine Arts here in New Mexico, up in Santa Fe at the Institute of American Indian Arts. So, I had, there's a connection here to New Mexico, and I really wanted to kind of, learn more about her and see if I could, find a, another book and another voice to add to my list at work. So pulling double duty here. This book, I will say I struggled really hard with. It's not a long book, it's like maybe 150, 180 pages, somewhere in there. But like the number of times I like had to pick it up and just put it down and walk away and just go do something else. It hit me hard on just so many different levels. There's so many different layers. Just so many, like it's a futuristic book, right? So it's something that is supposed to be set in the future, very sci-fi. There's like these characters are all in this like kind of smaller tribe of their own, and they're running away from essentially like white people. That's kind of how I was picturing it in my head.
Yes, that is precisely how I interpreted it.
Wait, you broke up. What did they resemble?
Oh, we can't hear you anymore, Care.
No. Sorry, no, it's fine. I was muting because my cats were being rude. What Shayna said, Bree, was basically that it seems like indigenous people who are essentially running from white people.
Oh, white people. Okay, yeah, it broke up. I didn't hear. Cool. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I forgot what they called them. Does anyone remember like what they called the people that were hunting them?
The recruiters.
The recruiters, yeah. Which I'm like, we'll just leave that word for a minute. But like,
yeah, that has connotation like
so many connotations, right? But yeah, like Kitchen is saying here, it's supposed to be a sci-fi, but I'm like I don't know. I was just set aside. There's so many things in there, from like missing and murdered Indigenous women. Like that's a huge thing, huge problem, especially for like like a lot of Canadian tribes and like First Nation tribes. Like I would argue they're hit harder, like some of the hardest tribes hit. So that's a current theme. Then we've got like all of like the colonialism and how a lot of Native American tribes have just historically been hunted by the U.S. and Canadian governments, like just in general. So that was also kind of all touched upon in there. So a lot of like historical themes and things that have affected Native American tribes over history were all like just layered into this book just so incredibly well. I think overall, probably what hit me like the hardest, that like literally made me have to like go like stop and put this down, was when we learned the story, like when we learned I guess I'm searching for her name, but the Rose's story, yeah. So I mean, it's yeah, I don't know. It was something that hit me really hard, because that's something that's touched my life personally. It's touched a lot of, you know, my like own like cousins and families and people that I've met over time, you know. So Rose's story, you know, she was you know, abused essentially, and just used as, first of all, like, you know, she was a runner, right? And so she kind of used that.
Oh no, that was WAB.
Oh, was that WAB? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm thinking about WAB. So like she was a runner. She's using her talent, her natural talent, which a lot of Native American, like just kids in general, are really good runners. Like cross country is a huge sport, as well as like, you know, things like basketball, anything with, you know, like natural athleticism. You know, and then she, you know, gets caught and abused for weeks on end. And that was like just something like, it hit me hard. Like, you know, her background in that, and how she was trying to deal with, you know, that impacting her, and trying to like open up and trust like her new little tribe of family. That was really hard for me to read and like go sentence, like literally I had to go like word by word, like just put the book down and walk away sometimes. But yeah, it was there were a lot of things that just kind of hit you left and right in this book. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well, to add,
you go first, Bree, for sure. Like I said, I'm just not going to shut up.
I was just going to say, to add to WAB's story, when I was reading reviews of this book, a lot of the negative criticism was, you know, child abuse, and they were talking about the hard scenes, and they were saying, why did you have to have that? And I really disagreed with those, exactly, Kier, my face exactly, with those negative reviews, because this is life. This happens. And when you turn a blind eye to abuse, child abuse, rape, all of these things, or, you know, taking, you know, cultural appropriation and all of that, et cetera, you are pretending it doesn't happen, and you're part of the problem. And so you can't ignore these things. So the fact that this book writes these difficult scenes and you are uncomfortable reading them, that's the point. You should be uncomfortable reading them, because children shouldn't be abused. Culture shouldn't have to run, and people shouldn't be hunted like cattle because of the color of their skin. But yeah.
Or because of the marrow in their bones.
Yeah.
Right? And oh God. So Kirsten's in the chat, and she was talking about, she said this earlier, you know, it's classified as sci-fi / you know, a dystopian. But was it really though? Is that really what it is? And yeah, so here she's saying again, it's not like the abuse, you know, is because it's dystopian. It's because it's happening now, and in fact, it's happened in the past. This is already something, perhaps not the thieving of the marrow from their bones, but this is something that has already happened to Indigenous peoples. There is nothing there's nothing fictitious about what has happened in this book. You know,
as a sci-fi reader, I don't know that I would have picked up this book or read it necessarily, because what you read on the back kind of sounds sci-fi-ish, but when you start reading it, it's not. It's very character driven. It's about the people. It's less about the setting. So the dystopia setting, the sci-fi setting, the fact this could be in the future. This could have been written in the 1800s. It doesn't matter. So it didn't really feel sci-fi to me, to be completely honest. But I think the important thing is that it's character driven. It's about their experiences. And then I had one more thing I forgot. It'll come back to me later. But
cool.
I like that you said it was character driven, because character driven writing gets a bad rap, and this is character driven writing done well. This was very well done. it was a short book, yes, but they told the story. They told the story so well that I did not realize it was a short book, because it was the story was so well written. I couldn't, there was no lagging parts. It was, and you saw the growth in all of the characters, in all of them. And it was so beautifully well done. And in terms of rating the book on a technical level, this was fantastic.
It's very different.
It was very, very different from plotting. You can kind of sometimes tell, okay, there is a twist coming. And good writing, in plot-driven writing, you get, a twist is coming, you just don't know what the twist is. And good plot writing is, I don't know what's going to happen next. I know it's going to happen, but I don't know what, versus this.
I'm going to say, as a writer, I don't believe in character-driven or plot-driven. Because if you write a well-written plot, your plot is going to create character growth. And if your book does not have character growth or some change occurring at the end or with your character is the exact same person with the exact same everything at the end of your book, it's not a successful book. Yeah. You've not actually engaged. So I appreciate that there are different approaches, like where you focus on your plot versus you focus on your, you focus on your character development, and that does create a different change in that creates something in your writing that's like differentiationable. I don't know. But I think at the end of the day, every good book has character growth. Every good book has good character-driven work, and the plot is what creates that. The plot is what puts things in the way of your character for them to overcome to achieve that. At any rate, that's just kind of a writer's tangent, and it's not necessarily specific to this book. But
this book, yeah,
I did, because we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about Ray Bearer as well, and we talked about how this was really character driven and stuff. And it's like this is young adult, which is often uses a formula. There's a plot. There's a formulaicness to a lot of young adults that I think Ray Bearer used. But it was different enough, and the characters in the world was different enough that we didn't stop to say what was derivative because of X, Y, and Z. Because a lot of those plot tools that we use as writers are things that are used over and over and over and over and over again, right?
Right.
Anyway, like I said, all else beside the point. A lot of what I think really pulled me into this book comes back to that culture. Shayna and I in college, we spent a lot of time talking about the similarities between our cultures and how we grew up. Things like the oral storytelling and things like, the way family interacted with family, and even stuff as simple as, am I related to you? And just trying to figure that out before you even think twice about whether or not you could date. Like, like pumpkin vine family. Are we pumpkin vine family? Are we not pumpkin? Like, even those little things. I think that, I think what sold me on this book is the very first moment Meeks tells stories. And I love how stories is capitalized. It's a capital S moment, right? It's not, and it's not like a story. It's not like a little bedtime tale. It's also something that they acknowledge you can't share with the little ones.
Yep.
Yeah. Like the young ones, and the young one who did hear something, he was like screwed up for a while. Yeah. But I feel like that says so much about how we engage with our children, just around deciding when it's time for them to bear certain burdens. I feel like it says a lot about that. Anyway, Shay, I think you were going to say something before I jumped in there and just started yammering. So go, your turn.
Yeah, no. You're hitting right on the head, right? I think the first note, like, I didn't take any notes while I was reading this book, just because I was struggling so hard that I felt like I needed some time to process it, right? And so after I finished it, I finally forced myself to sit down and write like a quick a quick paragraph on it, and literally the first words that I wrote was just historical pain. And there are just so many instances of things like in this book. I already talked about, missing and murdered Indigenous women, but like, Cherie, the author, she touched on residential schools. She took that's like a whole history that, for especially like Native American tribes in North America in general, like residential schools, like you say that's like key to like Canadian history actually, because, that's, what they referred to them. And so, but, we had residential schools in the United States as well. I mean, like my own grandfathers, like they were, taken from home and forced to go, all these children, like, whole generations of children were taken and forced to go into these boarding schools, residential schools, and, basically being forced to be westernized and Christianized. And so we've lost so much culture and history and language because of it. And so every single child, younger person in this book, is affecting them in different ways from, they were, kind of, you had different flavors of it, right? You had, some that were exposed to language as they were younger and culture, right? And I kind of identified a little bit with that because that's how I grew up. But then you had, Mig, who, like kind of, was at the very beginning of it, didn't have any of it. And so kind of was like, every little piece was like a, something to cherish. And, that was part of it too, just being able to, gosh, man, like trying to like parse through, like, how do we, today's problem with a lot of Native American cultures is that, we're trying to figure out how to preserve and, continue that culture on too. So it's like, it was touching on like some of those modern problems that we have today as well. And so like, I could literally just talk for hours about, each and every single one of those topics. And somehow in the span of, this short little book, like, the author was able to touch on all of these things, and every single one is just so well balanced and like perfectly interwoven.
It's really well layered.
The theme of this plot, it's so well layered. Like,
yeah.
I was blown away by that.
Kirsten Kirsten mentioned in the chat, and I did show the comments earlier, how, this is something that's happening now, or at least very still recently, in terms of the schools. She mentions that those schools were still open up into the 90s in Canada. Yeah. Which, what the? That's terrifying. Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. Something, because Gabriella knew she wouldn't be here. She sent me some thoughts that I could, share with the group, and I felt like this of the like paragraph and a half she sent, which hopefully I'll get to share from her perspective, more than just one line at a time. But she says the biggest thing I wanted to mention was I loved how much the story made me think. I actually had a lot of moments of sitting with my own personal discomfort around the knowledge of being a settler living on stolen land, with how the book portrayed the situation of Asian immigrants / diaspora who were both confused for Indigenous persons and weaponized against Indigenous persons. Yeah. She says she also really deeply empathized with Frenchie's piecing together his language and stories of his culture and treasuring whatever pieces he could find or learn from his elders, with how disconnected at times I've been made from my own language and cultural history, and the struggle as you try to learn what you lost or missed out on and worry if you're doing it right. I read this when she first sent it to me a couple of days ago when she knew she wouldn't be here. And I think that also really embodies a lot of my own feelings. We talked at length about how like I and Kirsten and some of the rest of us, conversing a couple of weeks ago, we talked a lot about how we've felt disconnected from our own heritage, and we felt, we've been trying to struggle to piece together what we can from the language that we no longer speak, from the rituals that we no longer engage in, and all of that. And there's something I think, and this is one of the many things that made me cry throughout this book. I absolutely, and I don't do that often. I don't think I often sit down at books and I'm like, like I don't. I don't ugly cry like this. But this book, I was sobbing.
It was mind blowing. Yeah.
It was.
I was sobbing, and it's not even my personal pain. As much as I can empathize, it's not my personal pain. But it's the real pain that real people are still feeling in real ways today when we look at what's going on and what's happening with the Indigenous population. Kirsten, real quick, Talia. So Kirsten says somewhere at the beginning of the book, they talk about Minerva pulling the air and smoke over her head. And it reminded me of Graham doing prayers with us as kids. And that's true. That's something that we do as well. When you get smoke from the altar, you pull it over your urnie, all right, and you might pull. Sometimes the urnie comes off and it goes into your hair, and then you like pull it back as you step away. I remember that really clearly, and that motion, like that kind of ritual as you do that. Somebody was speaking and I interrupted to pull up that comment.
No, when you pulled it up, what was it? In terms of one of the criticisms that I read about the book, and they said it was like laying in a bed of crumbs all night long, right? And this is why they hated the book. Now, you're laying in a bed, but when the morning comes, you're going to get up, you're going to take a shower, you're going to get those crumbs off of you. What about the people that are living with those crumbs on their skin all day long? What about those people who still feel, a grain of hair all over their face all day long? What about those people? And well, I'm a masochist when it comes to books. Right?
I mean, I know that. I don't know if everybody else know that. I know that.
You inflicted a bad book on me and I insisted on reading it. The entire thing.
I think that yes is about the crumbs, not about being a masochist.
No, being a masochist, that is personal. But this book was very, very difficult. And every time I thought about putting it down, to, just go do so. I was like, this is not my personal experience, but this is the actual personal experience of other people. You're talking about their bodies were used for parts when they were scalped so that they can get a bounty from the government. Yeah. And this was systematic. And to this day, lots of different things that are relevant in the book are still going on. There are still people missing. There's still people missing their families, and the people that are missing, what is happening to them? Are they, they're clearly not in a situation where they're comfortable or happy, and they're living this experience. And I can't spend 2 hours to sit down and read a book on it. That's not even, I'm not even enduring this. So I read the comment and I'm like, I was upset about the review because it didn't make sense. This is someone else's experience. And if reading about it makes you uncomfortable, how has this not radicalized you to say, go and march against the pipeline? How does this not cause you to say, listen, Indigenous people are undergoing severe oppression. Why don't I write to my senator to ensure that laws are enacted to protect them? Why doesn't it, why doesn't it motivate
I can
you
answer
to do
that
something?
question. I can answer that. Why doesn't it X? But first, Shayna might have some ideas on that herself.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's
I can go first if you want the moment. If you want a minute, like.
I need a minute, like 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the why? Oh, Bree, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say because Talia, you were commenting on the breadcrumb comment, and I think I also read that same review.
Yeah.
But ask yourself why you're uncomfortable, and I think people who are uncomfortable with being uncomfortable really need to sit with their feelings for a minute, because there's a reason, and the author had a reason. You need to feel uncomfortable when reading that book. That is her purpose. So
yeah.
Kirsten mentions, and I know that the folks, your comments are coming through. There's a slight lag because there's like a couple seconds between when we speak and when it shows up on YouTube or wherever, and then when you type a message after you hear that, it's a couple seconds before we get it. So there's a little bit of a lag. But Kirsten says that in Canada, there have been enough cases that it's embarrassing, and the missing cases have RCMP directly involved. The people who are supposed to be protected but are missing. So what I was going to say, I wanted to address that. Why isn't it radicalizing you? And the reason it's not radicalizing people is because a lot of those people, that book is about them. The people oppressing, the people, like, they don't want to be covered in crumbs. They don't want to be covered in crumbs. And
They
they
just
have
don't want the crumbs to
privilege.
exist at all.
They have the privilege of washing those away, and they don't have to come back to it. Everybody who had problems with this book, it's because they recognize themselves in the recruiters. They recognize themselves in the oppressors, and they recognize themselves in the maintenance of a system that in dystopian fiction ain't in fiction.
Mhm.
That's what it is.
But
They
even-
recognize themselves in that.
Yeah,
And so
that
if
line,
they radicalize,
that line between fiction and reality is just so
This
transparent
book-
in this book.
this book takes that line and is like,
Mm.
Yeah.
I'll look at more reasonable.
Even
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
even if to not say you don't recognize yourself in the oppressors or the recruiters, because maybe that's a really difficult thought for people to sit with, even just the person who stands by and watches it happen and doesn't do anything to stop it, a
But
bystander.
that's not any better than
No.
being one of the recruiters, right? If being complicit is the same thing. And that's the problem. It's why it doesn't radicalize those people.
Exactly.
It radicalizes the people who empathize with the experience of Frenchie et al., right? It will
Right.
radicalize those people. And those people probably don't even need that book to be radicalized, okay? They're experiencing enough. They're already radicalized.
Yeah.
But the people who need to be radicalized, they are going to be simply because they are the people. If that person is to radicalize, they're radicalizing against themselves and their
Exactly.
families. They're radicalizing against a system that benefits them.
And the
that's
thing
why
is like,
happen.
it felt,
Kirsten,
Yeah.
1 second, Talia. So Kirsten
Yeah.
says, I'm just trying to prioritize that because I know Kirsten has a lag. So she says, I hate that because reservations are so separated. It's too easy for everyone else to just ignore it and pretend like it doesn't happen. Yeah.
yeah, because that's a whole lot easier. And again, self-reflection is hard work.
Yeah.
It sounds simple
Yeah.
because with reflection feels like, okay, just go look in the mirror and you can see yourself and that's fine. But self-reflection means looking at the parts of yourself that you don't want to see.
Looking
Yeah.
at
Right?
your mirror is the hardest damn thing. And that's why we all pay money for therapists. Because it's not
Yeah, but we all. Some of we don't have no money for therapy, right? But
I've
No, but
stopped
you're right.
saying,
But you're right.
yeah. And like I read it, and the thing is, you're literally stealing people's marrow, grinding their bones to make your bread, so to speak, for a dream.
Yep.
For a dream.
let's talk about that metaphor.
Yeah, which I'm actually there is some truth to this because it's not marrow, right? It was actually blood, and that was actually how the whole Human Genome Project began, was through blood taken from Native American tribes here in the Southwest and used to start that and keep that project growing. So everything that we know about DNA sequencing came from stolen blood from Native American tribes.
Henrietta Lacks all over again. I mean, you know,
I mean,
Yeah.
in fact, yeah.
There's
But I know the Henrietta Lacks versus that.
BL
Yeah.
says self-reflection could lead to someone's death. And I think that's why narcissists and some assholes avoid it. I'm not sure. I feel like I want BL to expand on what he means by someone's death. But I would imagine it's something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not,
What was
that's-
that?
Yeah, Bree, you want to repeat that?
oh, I was saying, I think it came across as ego death. And ego
Yeah.
death is not a bad thing. In fact, I think that's what takes us to the next level of self-acceptance, self-reflection, and empathy for not only ourselves, but for other people. So ego death is important, but it's hard work. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
and that's what I was getting at. I think that's what BL's referring to as well. Angeli says, please note that there are very few schools, if any, teaching history or culture or norms from a non-European perspective.
So
True.
my comment on this is that I love this comment because it was so important to me in this book that when you had Mig sitting down telling stories and notice the word his is not in story. It's not his story. It's not European story told from the perspective of the conquerors, right? No, this is the facts of what has happened, not
Right.
that why it's happening to us or that we need this is the facts. This is why we are, in this camp. This is why we're constantly running from the recruiters. It to me, like just that poignant note there, difference
Yeah,
in
right.
calling it story.
And I think that
opposed
there's something from a writing perspective that was really compelling about that as well, for a few reasons. One is we're experiencing the tradition of oral storytelling, yeah, and then we're also experiencing what's essentially an info dump. Now,
Yeah.
again, as a writer, it's been trained out of me, right? Like, info dumping is not a thing, my love. Don't effing do it, right? And yet, so when I read info dumps now, badly done info dumps, obviously, my gut reaction, my knee jerk for it is just like, blah. Like, why is this here? I don't need to read this. There's nothing interesting about this. You can bring all of this world building and all of this history in so many more creative ways. And when I read it in this story, I did not feel like that. I did not feel like that even for a moment. In fact, I felt grounded. I felt like I was sitting at that fire, listening to the true history, the true recount of events that happened. And I was learning alongside the children who were listening.
Yeah.
I think
that was like a key thing for me, right? Because it was like, it wasn't just how you learned about what was happening throughout the plot of the book, right? But you feel like you were part of that little tribe where you were literally going through life gathering little pieces of information. And honestly, that's, a corollary to how we all grow as children, right? And so I kind of felt like, as that story went on, we were kind of developing as readers until, we kind of got the full picture of what was going on.
Yeah.
So we were kind of growing with the characters as we went. And I really enjoyed that.
And I think the characters were excited to hear story. It's it was a good thing.
It's
not
a piece of their culture that they're learning, right? That they no longer have.
Yeah, it wasn't an info from the author to the reader. It was to the characters, and you were a witness to that event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also, we kind of talked about oral history a little bit last time with Drunk Speak and that sort of story. And then it was interesting to see it again here. But here, I think it was also kind of darker because they're on the run. It's raining, it's snowing, they can't carry books. So this is the only way to keep their history alive is orally all day, telling it to the kids over and over and over again so that when Mix is gone, that story will live on. And just to touch on one other thing, that Mix's story is the one that hit me the hardest, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
In his story, we learn about Isaac. And they're basically at a point, for anybody who didn't read the book, where they're in a cabin. It's right at the beginning. So I almost kind of related to that with coronavirus. When we were at the beginning of coronavirus and we're like, is this a big deal? Maybe not. Well, let's stay home and buy some toilet paper and wait it out. And that's kind of what Isaac and Migs were doing. They were waiting it out in the cabin. And then they meet false recruiters. And Isaac is kind to them. And he's like, no, it's no big deal. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. And I almost attribute it to a wild animal who's never seen humans before, let's say like in the Galapagos. And they're going to come up to humans like, oh, hey, what are you? Because you've never been hurt by them. And that's kind of what Isaac was. And then Migs later on is the animal who's been, hit by a boat or hit by a hunter. And it's like, we stay away no matter what.
Yeah.
Where I'm going with this is basically when they were trying to escape and they were grabbing all their things to go, Isaac was grabbing books. He wanted to take books, Migs was grabbing guns and food and he was grabbing books. And it was just sad because it's like, that was like the last bit of written history. And it's like, that's not your life anymore. Writing poetry, writing books, reading books, no more. We're going to talk around the campfire because it's survival now. But
there's been some conversation online with regards to closed practices, and one person was asking, why is voodoo closed? No, not hoodoo in particular. Why is that a closed practice? And they said, well, it's because it's our link to our culture. So you want to keep it closed so that you don't let cultural appropriation and people who don't understand because they don't have that generational pain. You don't want people who don't know about it to taint it.
Yeah.
And then the same person came back in another comment and said, yes, but I don't get it. Why is it closed? And then when I read this about Isaac, who said, no, let's try to talk to them. You know, I'm white, I have blue eyes, you know. Yes, but you still look Indian. You're still registered as being mixed with Indian. And it's like, there are people
I'm not sure we should be using the word Indian here, but okay.
Sorry. What was that, Bree?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, that's fine. What was that?
Are you still muted?
Muted.
Oh my God, I keep hitting it and it keeps I agree that, like, when I first read it, actually, I was confused. I'm like, Indians, we don't use that. But I think because the author used it and it's...
Well, yeah, I know that that's why she's using it. I'm just saying that I don't know if I want to... So,
perpetuate. Yeah.
Yeah, like, not how to put this? It's one thing when the author is using it in the context that the author is using it in. But when we're, like, in this conversation... you're referencing the book, yes, but you're talking about a wider problem and you're trying to apply this and talk about a wider group of people. And I think especially as a freaking Indo-Trinidadian, it confused me.
Actually, you know, of East Indian descent. Yeah, sorry. My bad.
Like, what? And then I realized, before you continue, I want to just touch quickly on what has been happening in the chat. To go back a little bit, Kirsten was talking about how, in terms of education, she, who is in Canada, she did watch like a single 20-minute video about residential schools during her entire schooling. And her younger brother, who I think is like 16 years my junior, 12 years Kirsten's junior, he didn't learn anything at all, right? Angeli was talking about how worse, perhaps what they teach is also just wrong. And that there's no interest. You know, people tend to ignore what's not in their interest, and that is kind of the root of the reasoning behind trotting out the idea that the best interests of all or of many is really held over the best interest of one. And then Kirsten is coming back to what you're talking about there, Talia, about closed practices. Kirsten says that I personally feel it's almost like, don't take this from me too, in terms of closed practice. And I'm really inclined to agree with that. It's about when you keep that practice closed, it's about not allowing it to be polluted. It's about not allowing it to be taken from you and change into something else. And because if you share, and it's interesting, right? Like you might think to yourself, this is mine. And if I share some of it with somebody else, it doesn't change that this is mine. But what does change is the documentation of it. And that documentation is what becomes the history that we look back on. And when you start sharing it with people who don't understand that history, and I think who don't understand everything within this closed box in the same way that you do, it means that what's documented is not the truth. It's not the heart. It's not that core or those pillars. It's something. It's an interpretation, and then it gets inaccurate.
And then it gets recontextualized.
Exactly.
And oftentimes sorry.
I'm gonna say, like, that's something that I feel like is just that you kind of lose when you take things from an oral setting to a written setting, right? And this is kind of the power of oral stories, is that you get that context with it. Anyone can pick up a book, and anyone can pick up, and I've stressed this a lot, even like at work too, like anyone can pick up a PowerPoint presentation and they can look at a picture or words you've written there, and they can interpret it 100,000 different ways.
Right.
But it's not until you give that presentation, it's not until you hear that story from an elder, do you really get that true context and meaning of what's going on. And that's kind of why I felt like, oral history is just so much stronger than a written like history, right?
And it's also so much harder to do, right?
It is much harder to do.
Skill. It takes so much more skill.
And this was like the evening ritual almost.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it was. My mom says that her comments are disappearing into the ether. I don't know if maybe she just didn't see that I actually read all of the comments yet. But no, your comments are not disappearing into the ether. It's just that because of the lag, we're talking about a lot before we have, and like I don't like interrupting people in the middle of their points, right? To be like, I'm going to read from the chat and then you can talk. So just keep that in mind. But I am definitely trying to come back and make sure that I read everything that there is coming out of the chat today.
But yeah, I mean, it really, like, just to touch back on Kirsten's comments about how, they feel like it's, don't take this from me too. Like, that's, really good example of that even today with like Native American tribes is a lot of the Pueblo tribes here, like, they allow like the general public to come in for like their feast days and to like, participate in their traditional dances and songs and feasts that they have. But everywhere you go in their village, like there's like photos and signs everywhere to say like no cameras, no recording devices allowed and stuff. And it's kind of that same thing where they're opening up a little bit so that they can share some of that culture with people, but they don't allow anyone to come in and write down their language or their stories or record their dances and songs. Like they're very closed off to, I think, just anyone outside of the tribe from being able to take any of it away with them.
So
I'm like, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, there's actually an excerpt that's pretty good for that. This was in, let me see what chapter. Oh, story part 2. So story chapters were always the hardest hitting.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excerpt. It says, at first, people turn to...
Wait, sorry. Just because I'm still doing this thing where I'm going back into the chat, right? Just for clarity. Anjali says that she was saying that non-white peoples are conditioned into believing that they and their lived experiences are inferior or just wrong.
That's gaslighting?
Yes. But also real life technique used by colonizers.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Please continue.
TM.
Abuse is abuse, right? It doesn't matter if it's of a whole, of a single person or a whole culture, but it's awful. But anyway, so the expert, so this is Miggs telling story time. At first, people turned to the indigenous people the way New Agers had, all reverence and curiosity, looking for ways they could help guide them. They asked to come to ceremony, what you were explaining. They humbled themselves when we refused. That sounds like manipulation. And then they changed on us. Yeah, looking for ways they could. Oh, yeah. And then they changed on us, like the New Agers, looking for ways they could take what we had and administer it themselves, changing it to make it for them. How could they best appropriate the uncanny ability we kept to dream? How could they make ceremony better, more efficient, more economical? That was the first alarm set off in the communities. We thought it was the worst, if only. So they came in. How can we take this? How can we use it? But then it wasn't even just taking their culture. It came down to taking their bone marrow. So that's where the dystopia really took it to the next level. On purpose. Because I think allegory, you have to make it extreme for people to feel what you're trying to make them feel.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
Kirsten mentions, sorry. So Kirsten says that when she was a kid, and they still do this every year, they do this huge traditional festival in Barrie that's open to the public in a big, open, publicly owned field. But they do it there, and they sell wares, etc. too, but not in their own homes. They bring it to this big public place to share. Because, and I completely agree, I am bringing you to my house for you to wear your shoes.
Full circle.
Right? Full circle.
yeah. And I get a lot of the criticism around closed practices and so on stem from the previous abuse. Because when the Americans came, when the Europeans, came to America, they were met with the indigenous population that treated them with respect, that treated them with generosity. And how were they rewarded for it? They weren't, right?
I've never seen white people before, so we're going to welcome them and treat them nice until white people start hurting you. And that's...
And I want to point out that we had the same, sorry, Talia. I want to point out we had the same conversation when we were talking about Rivera. And we talked about a conversation that Gabriella and I had with one of her books where it was like, well, why did you welcome them?
Yeah. And I said, but because it's a nice thing to do, and we are conditioned to be nice, right?
But we are conditioned to be nice,
nice.
right? Like we aren't conditioned to be nice because we're brown. We are just nice, and we give you the benefit of the doubt. So it's like, why all of these other people came to trade. Go tell me. Sorry.
Not just that. This is the part that really bugs me. Who said when in Rome? That quote. Whose quote is that? But you come to the Americas, you come to the Caribbean, and you're not acting like you are. Basically, when you are somewhere, you act in accordance. So your rule in your home would be like, please keep your shoes on. But the rule in my home is, keep my shoes off. But if I come to your home and you say, please keep your shoes on, right? If I come to your home and your home is, please keep your shoes on, me taking my shoes off is rude, right? You understand what I'm saying here? So you take these people, you brutalize them into submission, right? And then now that they have maybe a whiff of fresh air, why practice is closed? Why can't we wear headdresses to Coachella?
So Kirsten says no, because they showed up and says, "Oh, look, savages! We can make them better."
I was gonna say they weren't just coming in to wear their shoes in your house. They're like, we don't care if we wear your shoes in your house because we're about to take your house. It's my house.
Thank you.
I mean,
we're coming in.
But when we were talking about Ray Bear, right? We made a comment, I believe, where the best antagonists think that they're the protagonists, right? And so that's kind of how colonizers have always been, is that they think we're the heroes. We're going to come in and we're going to, share our God and share our religion with these people and make them better and save them, right? And that's actually a theme in these schools, right? In all of these schools, saying that, we're going to save the man and, and beat away the Indian, right? And that is, that's like the worst, best thing about all of this, right? It's so frustrating. And actually, like, the perfect thing that's kind of going on right now with the whole pandemic is that, even my tribe, the Navajo tribe, we had, when the vaccines first came out and testing. So when the testing tents came from the U.S. government to come set up on our reservation, and people were so scared. They did not want to go anywhere near the testing units and stuff. And so it took our tribal leadership to go and say, and bring our own people in and encourage people to come in and get tested. And then that's when they started realizing just how big of a problem COVID was on our reservation. And now we've got, one of the highest, vaccine rates in the entire country, actually. But yeah, there was that, that historical pain of we don't trust what the U.S. government is bringing us. Why do we want to go get tested? What else are you going to steal from us? And it's all
among all that's widespread.
Yeah.
And I think Kirsten's comment here. So let's talk about trends like burning sage and sweetgrass because it's cool. And when there are actual tribes that don't have this flora for themselves because they need to sell it to white people to get by. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having to monetize your own culture to feed yourself and
on your own land?
Yes, and have to take what you would like to certainly be perhaps your own closed practice because you don't want polluted. You don't have a choice. You literally need to break off pieces of your soul to feed your children.
The same video that I had referenced in terms of why is it a closed practice? It was literally, what if I buy sage? What if I purchase sage from an authentic Indigenous person? Which that whole sentence rubs me, every single word in it rubs me wrong. But that was a question. And they said, well, if we are telling you it's a closed practice, no matter how you get said sage, you should not be burning it. Right?
Yeah.
Because
not that, certainly, at least if you want to burn some sage because I like the smell and you're getting some kind of sustainably made something, or maybe, yeah, like a lot of, but like if you're doing it for cultural practice reasons, like smudging, and I use the quotation marks because you can't do it if you're not Indigenous.
My favorite comment
am I
in
right,
that.
Shayla?
You are. No, you totally are.
My favorite comment in that.
Can I also comment on this trend of wearing headdresses at music fests? I've been to a few, and then I've been to like sporting venues too, or like the Kansas City Chiefs where they do this like tomahawk chop during the game. And like for the longest time, like I sat there and I would kind of like internalize it and say it's not worth making an argument. But like my sister and I, we were at this football game, and you know, you had all these crowds of white people doing this tomahawk chop, and me and her, we just looked at each other. We're like, this is horrible. This is like a bastardization of our entire culture, right? And it is a massively vibrant culture, right, with just all kinds of multifaceted things. But like, I don't feel like people really understand it until, you know, they're in the middle of it, kind of like I was in the middle of that stadium and stuff. And so there's actually some really cool like t-shirts and things like that I'm like, I need to go invest in, you know, where they take, you know, popular caricatures of, you know, like Jewish people or like, you know, Black people and stuff, and they turn it back on the people that created it, right? And, you know, they'll create like baseball logos that are called Caucasians and stuff, which I actually think is like a nicer version of like Redskins, but you know, that's an argument for another day. But I'm like, we need more of that, just to start showing people more books like this that make people uncomfortable, just to put them in the middle of these trends that they're taking on, these cultural appropriations that they are taking in from themselves, and not giving a second thought to what is the actual significance of smudging your room? What is the actual significance of wearing a headdress? All of these different things have meaning and purpose, and you're just glossing over it by throwing some money on it and saying like, that looks cool, I'm gonna do that.
So Kirsten in the chat says that she has a friend who, when she was enlightened about it all, she was told to bury her sage to give it back to the earth. I have a friend I was talking to last night, I think, or the night before, and we were talking about tarot actually, which is a closed practice, and I have lots of feelings about now, like any engagement that I've had with that in the past. Like, I think tarot is something that Julie, who I don't know if Julie is still watching or listening, but they introduced me to tarot, and I had started using it as a way to manage my own anxiety. So like spreads would give me prompts that would help me think more deeply about what I'm dealing with and like why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, and just sort of give me prompts to do the critical thinking that I needed to do to figure my own shit out, right? Like I know that that's not how everybody uses it, and I know that it is for, there are many people, a spiritual or like a connected thing. But it's worked for me in the way that it has. And I don't, obviously, like, I don't know enough about this to do readings for other people, but certainly you shouldn't, right? And I've had, since I learned that, a lot of feelings about even using it for my own anxiety. And I was talking to someone else about that the other day, and talking about how so much I think of what helps with my anxiety is sort of just the ritual of sitting down and shuffling and just kind of asking myself these questions, and trying to figure out what my own thoughts are and engage with my own feelings and just kind of dig around in my own head. And she I was talking to her about like when you get a deck, you know, part of the ritual of engaging with your deck is like you cleanse it first. And she was like, oh, like burning sage. And I was like, look, Gil, the best thing for you to do is to dry some shadow benny and burn that. Don't go looking for no sage. I also don't remember where I decided or why I decided shadow benny is what I should do.
I think Julie told us about that. Julie told us about that.
You just enjoy saying it is all.
Oh, that I didn't just say in shadow Benny, sure.
Yeah.
But like people do that. People burn bay leaves in their house and stuff here. Like that's a thing that we do. That's a cultural practice for us. And I think that's acceptable. Like that's, you know, as opposed to you're reaching out to something else entirely, that you're not connected to, that you don't have any deep roots in. Yeah. Somebody in the chat, BL says, is it okay if I ask how you feel about yoga? I'm gonna mute myself right now. So that I have a minute to think about this question and come back with coherent words. And in the meantime, the rest of y'all can keep chatting.
Do we talk about actual yoga? Yeah, Bree, you were saying something?
Oh no, I was just going to add to what Shayna had said about, you know, making people feel uncomfortable. And again, it's the thought that I keep having with this book is that change doesn't come when you're comfortable. If you're comfortable, if I'm sitting here eating cake and I'm comfortable eating cake, I'm not taking my ass to the gym. You know, it's when I look in the mirror and my clothes don't fit that I start to feel uncomfortable with myself. I start to feel shame and self-judgment. That I sit with that discomfort and I say, what can I do? I can change. Change comes from discomfort. So when you look at images like you were discussing with the Caucasian and you start feeling uncomfortable, you're like, why do I feel uncomfortable? That's a space for change. It doesn't happen always. I think it takes a mature person. But if you sit with that discomfort and you start asking yourself questions the way Kier says she asks herself questions and sits with herself, that's where change is born. So I think discomfort as a tool for change is not a bad thing. And I think that's also a cultural thing. People say, oh, discomfort is bad. Discomfort is bad. Discomfort is not bad.
Discomfort is literally how you grow. And as writers, we all know that to be true.
When you're at the gym and you're lifting weights and your muscles hurt, guess what? That's the space
for growth.
Getting strong. You're not going to lift 1 pound weight and get strong and change. You're going to change with discomfort. Anyway, that's it.
No.
My old martial arts teacher used to say pain is weakness leaving the body. Mm-hmm. And in our case, we could say things like pain is discomfort is, you know, it's that leaving your body. It's your weakness, whether it's institutionalized, whether it's emotional, whether it's egotistical. It's that problem leaving the body. So you need to get uncomfortable so that can leave you and that you can get that growth to be a better person.
In the case of cultural appropriation, it's going to be shame. Why am I feeling shame? And then that's going to lead to change. But anyway.
So there's a whole bacchanal happening in chat. So Anjali explains to BL, or says to BL, that a tenet in Hinduism that is not always recognized is that regardless of what you believe and practice, your energy, soul, or what we might call Atma, will recycle. Essentially, we're all Hindus because Hinduism is just a way of life. Kirsten asks, read the yoga question, are we talking about cute hip yoga or the lifestyle or the ascetic yogis? I don't know too much, but I watched a document about ascetic yogis, and I don't think hip people really want to take in that side of it. BL is clarifying that they mean yoga as practiced in/by Westerners as exercise/relaxation. And Anjali says, yoga is a practice that was developed by sadhus to maintain their body while they worked on their inner self. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing those words correctly, not gonna lie. But that's a whole other conversation about why I can pronounce things from my own ancestral language. Anyway.
I mean, but there's examples of that everywhere, right? I mean, like not just in yoga, but like the whole sport of lacrosse was created by Native Americans, and
check Talia taking notes.
and who plays it? Country club white people.
It's true.
It's actually a trope in movies. Like he doesn't play basketball; he plays lacrosse.
Yeah.
And you're right.
No, it's not like very beautiful. With your headphones.
No, I didn't. It's well entrenched. That is a literal trope. That is a literal trope.
Oh God, Kirsten.
It's rich white boys playing lacrosse. Brett or any of that.
And Angelique says we're all working through what we need to in this life and we'll either progress or we won't. So to come back, to just give my own kind of opinion, Angelique says, so we really hope yoga will make you better and help you to find your way. I think I may have slightly more complex feelings about yoga than my mother, evidently. I clearly didn't take the minute I needed, right?
I think,
to answer
okay,
Biel's question, from like my perspective and how I feel about yoga, I think that yoga has been absolutely appropriated and whitewashed. I think that there's no question about that. I think that there are some people who try to engage with the spirit of what it means to engage in a yoga practice. I think that there are some people who try to engage with the history behind the art. I think that there are some people who engage in some genuine cultural exchange and kind of adapt practices to make it their own. And I'd be a hypocrite to say otherwise, and I'd be a hypocrite to say that it's a bad thing, because that's precisely what I did with tarot. I'm using tarot to manage my own anxiety and to cause me to ask critical questions about myself and my emotions and my reactions, right? That help me to make decisions about what I want to do. Yeah, I'm not using it as a divination or a method to speak to something outside of my own mind and body. Yeah. You're laughing at Kirsten's comments. Kirsten says, listen, every time I hear some white girl say namaste in bed, I scream. Yes. That's a very good summary of my own thoughts and feelings, right? Because despite the fact that I think that happens, I think that I also do my very best to engage with tarot respectfully and with respect for the roots that it came from, even though I use it differently. I don't do readings for other people. I don't take money for readings, certainly, right? Most people don't even know I use tarot. Because most people who know me are like Care, the ever-present skeptic. Like, I'm sure you didn't even know, right?
But Care, one thing to add to that. You remember when I first met you guys, you and Julie, and you gave me the deck, and I started to get into it, and I was looking up spreads and how to use the deck, just getting into it to curiosity and so on. And everything that was basic was by a colonizer, and it was all behind all the advanced stuff was behind a paywall.
And that's actually what I'm also getting at with yoga. One of the reasons that I have those complicated feelings is that I cannot engage in yoga right now without monetarily benefiting someone who essentially stole that practice from who are my ancestors. I can't do it. And I have every right to engage with yoga as a practice. Okay. It came from people whose descendants birthed me. Okay.
Exactly.
I have a right to that heritage. But if I want to engage in that heritage, I have to learn it through, if not an actual white person, I have to learn it through someone who learned it through like a hierarchy that is predominantly white or systemically Caucasian, right? Or colonizer. And I have problems with that. Kirsten brings up some really good points here. In reality, we used to go see the Pandit as kids, and that was always a serious thing. When you say namaste, I'm guessing is what she's referring to, that namaste, and like we hear these white girls like using it. And then she goes, I literally can't afford to go to the yoga classes I was trying out before, and it's owned by a couple rich white girls, but unfortunately that's just where I live. And that's what I'm getting at, right? Is that I do have so many feelings around it, because I think that at the point of that where yoga is right now, I can't be like, oh, Q, you can't engage in yoga if you're not if you don't have at least Indian heritage or like South Asian heritage or whatever, right? Because I would kind of literally be taking that away from people who are benefiting from it in a personal, deeply personal way that it is perhaps intended, the benefit is intended to give that way, potentially like the way it is for me, right? And my mother points out that yoga in a class is about monetization. Well, it doesn't have to be.
No, not just that. Speaking of which, you know, right out the road from where we live, I think in between where we live, there is a temple that teaches yoga for free. It's yoga and meditation.
Yes.
And they said, listen, and I remember calling them, and this was before I got pregnant. I remember calling them, and they said, listen, if you come in so that you could learn how to do a split, this is not a place for you.
Yeah, don't come.
Don't come.
Yeah.
Right? You come in to do some deeply spiritual work.
Yeah, that's what yoga is supposed to be. I mean, there are all sorts of other benefits. And I certainly, when I started yoga, a lot of the reason I had started yoga when I did was for my health. It was because I have all these back problems and, you know, all of this other crap. BL says that he felt kind of the same way when Kabbalah swept through Hollywood. And Anjali says, Kirsten says, "Ooh, Tira Bum Bum." Yes, that was my cat, Tiramisu, who just like flew off the back of the chair. Anjali says, once you do a basics course for positioning, then you can practice alone or with family and friends, which she thinks is the best way to do it. And Kirsten says, "I had a dream once upon a time of trying to get my yoga certification and then also teaching it for free, but teaching it properly." I too have that dream, but I too am old with a bad back. So there's dreams and there's realities. And at this point, I just have to pick my battles, right? Right now, my battle is finish my book, become a literary agent, kick ass. That's the battle I'm choosing right now. After that, I can go learn to teach you.
But again, it's about the monetization of it. And I can't remember the name of the movie that we watched recently, but it was by Mads Mikkelsen was in it. And they were these guys, these indigenous people, and they walked into a hotel that they had problems getting into. They had to literally show that they could pay, right? As though they were going to the bank for a loan. They had to show that they could pay. And they walked through. And they said, "Hey, whose grandmother did this?" And they're like, "Oh, no." And they looked it up. They said, "Oh, made in China." And they walked away. And it was just this one highly uncomfortable moment. And afterwards, I'm like, let me go check the reviews. And they spoke about how that was unnecessary. Why someone can't have something beautiful to appreciate the culture. And also it'd be cheap. And whose culture is it benefiting if you purchase it from?
Oh, you mean Uncle Robin? Is that who you're referring to in this comment, Mom? And I mean, the answer is obviously yes. Uncle Robin is a badass. Are you kidding? Of course I want to be Uncle Robin when I grow up. Sorry, that was like a detail.
Yeah. No, but
I agree with you, Talia. Yeah. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Because you can buy Sage on Amazon. Is Jeff Bezos going to be giving the community compensation? Like
Yeah.
So is it really that much of a stretch that it'll be like, "Oh, let me get your blood so I can dream"?
I have so many.
I mean,
All right,
So how about this? Like, so a big thing that I think the yoga discussion, the movie, art, everything like that is very central to a lot of discussions I've had growing up. So a little bit, I guess, about my history is that my family, you know, we one of our main businesses that helped put food on my table growing up was sourcing and taking Native American art and selling it to tourists, right? I mean, like, that's one thing, right? Because, you know, for us, it was taking something that, you know, we made artistically and we're sharing it with the public as a way of feeding ourselves and taking care of ourselves, clothing, everything, right? That's what got me to where I am today. And a constant conversation I have with my father, gosh, just every few weeks, it feels like, is about how, you know, you can buy these things mass produced from, you know, Asia, from Mexico, a lot of these things. And then we were even having a discussion about how, you know, this new age of CNC machines and 3D printers and stuff. And so we had these conversations of like, you could make something more rapidly, more intricate, or mass produced using those machines and those techniques, but is that really authentic at that point and stuff? And so, we go around and round with this all the time. And, it's something where I think getting back to the point of, us making and producing and designing it for ourselves, where we have a deep-rooted connection to the significance of these patterns, the significance of these characters that we're drawing on, pottery or on our rugs or, sand paintings and things like that. I think that's one thing. The source of the knowledge of where these designs come from is one thing. The other, I feel like, is whether or not we're monetizing it to make a profit is really, I think, up to that person who's producing that art, who is making that class. It's really up to them, I think, to understand that this is a way of feeding and sustaining myself as a person, but without paying attention to the source of where this information and this culture is coming from, you're not going about this correctly. And that's something that I've constantly had to kind of think and adapt for myself, right? I mean, we have people that want to practice tarot, that want to practice yoga, that want to burn sage to cleanse their apartment. Like I have friends that do that too, but I think it's okay for them because they come to me and they ask me questions about, if I have a dream about this, like, or if I'm moving into a new space, how do I do this properly?
Respectfully.
I think, and respectfully, in a way that, teaches me to appreciate where the culture of these things are coming from, right? And I practice yoga for my health as well, not greatly, but, I do it because it's something that helps me out, but, having this conversation makes me think more about like, well, where am I sourcing this from? How can I pay more respect to the culture that comes from, right? And it's constantly asking yourself that question of, how can I pay homage to the cultural source of where these different practices and things come from? And really, I think at the root of all of our conversation today, that's really what's a part of it all, is how do we constantly, as a world population, get to a point where we can understand and respect each other without glossing over the history that has happened that has gotten us to this point, right? It's going to take each of us kind of equally asking and seeking to understand it, not just, ignoring it because it makes us uncomfortable, or, kind of whitewashing it and say like, oh, but look, I can put on a headdress and go listen to news, like give a concert. Like it's learning to have that internal respect and showing it to each and every single one of the cultures we come across.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it comes down to, is it out of respect and curiosity, or is it because it's trendy and it's on Instagram?
Yeah.
And is it a financial thing, or is it a
something
spiritual
believe
thing,
in.
or a belief? I think something. So Shayna mentioned, selling a lot of like your traditional work and your traditional art and stuff. And I remember when I visited Shayna finally for like the first time ever after I graduated from my master's, I stuck around and I traveled down to New Mexico. What was it? Old Town? Is that where we went? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Old Town.
And I saw this absolutely gorgeous bracelet, a silver, like, do you remember that silver like wire? Like, it was beautiful. And I didn't have enough cash on me at the time, I think, to get it. And I had asked about, where, because I live in a world where if I don't have to leave my house, I'm good. So my immediate question was just like, how could I contact you online? Do you have like a catalog? Can I order this after I get home and just have it shipped to me? Like, how do I engage with you if I can't be here in person because I don't have enough cash on me to buy this, and I really want it. It's beautiful. And the lady, she was like, well, I didn't make it. My son made it. But we don't put anything online because people steal the designs and mass produce it. And I had known it. I knew that. I'm not, I think critically occasionally, right? That's how I got like school paper things. Like I can do that.
School paper things.
But that was the moment when somebody, I had to speak to somebody, talk to them in their face, like in real life, and for them to say that, for me to go, shit. It's not just a thing that's like happening in my periphery, right? It's a reality.
It's a real issue.
Yeah, and that's for somebody who knew it happened. Like I knew that this was a thing, and I still, like, she said that to me, and I was like, God damn it, ruining it for the rest of us.
That happened to a local artist of ours, Brianna McCarthy. Her design was stolen from the internet.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Nice little Trini girl, stolen by some big fashion retailer to put on t-shirts.
I remember that. That was a big thing. And that continues to happen where small artists who post their work on a virtual platform, that work gets stolen and like printed or reprinted or something else. And, I get it. I get it when you're like a poor peon and you want a little bit of artwork. You want to print out a little picture on your inkjet, right? That you buy for like $10 and you have like just enough ink for one picture. Like, I get that, right? Or you take it by a friend who have an inkjet and you do it because you can't afford your own printer. Like I get it, because you deserve to enjoy art too.
But right? I don't get the large fashion retailer.
That's the thing.
I don't get you doing that. Yeah. I just don't. And another thing that bothers me is like why do we need an Afro-Latino Spider-Man? Why don't they write their own stories? I was like, but y'all steal shit from us all the time.
All the time.
And like we in Trinidad, we have a saying, thief from thief makes God laugh. Like, God has had some pretty hard responsibilities this past couple of years. I mean, just give him a joke. That's the thing. But But again, coming back to this, when in the first chapter, when his brother called him Francis, and he knew it was serious because he calls him Francis and nobody calls him Francis. And he's never called Francis anywhere else in the book, but in that first chapter by his brother. I thought of Deadpool calling that guy Francis when he was trying to get to him. I'm like, Francis!
Why are you like this?
Are you not thinking it as well?
I am now.
I thought of it.
Thank you.
I did.
I did not. The whole tone was way too serious for me to think about Deadpool at that point.
No, I mean, it happened in the first chapter, so we didn't get to see why they were making. So I got that and I wrote it down. I wrote it down. Okay, it's there.
I know exactly what you're talking about, but even in that like first, because it's like the first 3 pages, right? It's like really early on. But even then, and again, coming back to like my thoughts on this as a writer, even that the voice, the seriousness of the voice,
urgency,
right? Yes, the urgency. It was so good. I couldn't. Not Ryan Reynolds or any other Deadpool, just like straight out of the comic book Deadpool, nothing. Couldn't do it.
No, I was in the dark. I was in the cold. I was watching it happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You felt that.
I couldn't do it.
You grabbed a tree, it hurts,
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I wanna, because we've been at this for almost an hour and a half, ladies. I want to come back to a bit of Gabriella's comments. So she did say, overall, I love the book. I went in expecting to be emotionally crushed, but by the end felt actually uplifted. So overall, it was a super cathartic read in a way. And the descriptions were so lush and gorgeous. I enjoyed the dreamlike quality of some parts of the writing. Gabriella did also say that she made the hideous mistake of going on to Goodreads and reading all the top-rated 1- and 2-star reviews from white folks, and now she wants to light her hair on fire and do a write-up for a proper review on Marrow Thieves and then post it everywhere. I'm inclined to agree, but I want to talk about that first thing that I said, that she mentioned about how it was a cathartic read overall, and by the end, we all, I mean, I don't know about we all, but I think I agree that it was kind of uplifting. By the end, there was a ray of hope. Somebody else go first.
I mean, your just soul is crushed, right? Because we lose Rose, we lose Minerva.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I know. I'm not gonna say how or when, but yeah, it was crushing. Like,
oh no, like the description totally
Yeah.
has spoilers in the description
cool.
now, so you listen at your own peril. Spoil it, do it, talk about it. Let's do it. This is what we're here for.
I'm doing it. Oh God, okay. Those are some crushing moments where we lose Rose, like. And like we talk about we lose our youngest children, we lose our elders and stuff, and like to me there was like a lot of like spiritual things and like external things that kind of happen to me, like when Rose gets taken over, like she gets literally kidnapped and then taken over a cliff, right? And it's like it brought back that that kind of historical trauma where we've had children stolen from us in the middle of the night and then we never see them again. We're constantly fighting this battle of losing our elders, and we have Minerva who's taken, and she finds some way to defeat the recruiters, right? And so we're constantly fighting to get that back, to get that culture and that knowledge back. And stuff. And so to me, that was like, another like soul crushing thing. But then by the end of it all, like, we learn of the trauma of Mig and how, Isaac was taken away and how, he went through just this heartbreak of losing the love of his life and finding like this tube that he thought was, all that was left of the person he loved, and carried that with him. And then we come to find out that, he was saved and that, he comes back. And I was just like, at the end of it all, I was just like, okay, there is hope. There is that lingering hope at the end of the day that, we will find each other at the end of all of this, and that, above all, like love can cure, what, and compassion can cure, the hunt or the persecution of people against others.
Yeah, I think to what Talia was talking about earlier, I think about like the twists and the plots and character. That's not necessarily, I don't think I saw that coming. I don't feel like that was foreshadowed at all. I was like, well, he did. He gorn. And that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I did not. And that, I think that was one of the breaking moments for me.
To go back to what you said earlier, Kay, in terms of, there's a language that we're supposed to be a part of that we don't know. And I thought of Frenchie not being able to know some of the words. He had to be taught his own language. And when Minerva died, my first thought was, oh my God, they lost their elder. Then, oh my God, they lost their language. And we'd already known how her song had destroyed machines and so on. And it's like, I thought Minerva was going to come back, teach them their language, and, set them up, set a trap for them that they deliberately get caught, and then they all sing, then they learn the song, and then and that did not happen. And I was crushed. You want to talk
Real
about
life don't
that?
happen so, gal. Real life don't happen so.
Listen, it was a book, and I hoped that my feelings would have been spared, and they would. Okay, and I'm not mad. And then when they found, found Isaac, because I thought they would have found Mitch, because that is how a Westerner would write the book, and that is just to show how we've in our own colonialization, our own internalized colonialism. And then when they found Isaac but not Mitch, You know, I'm like, oh my God, he's a linguist. They can their languages, and he will teach them their language. And it ended there, and that for me was the hope. That not just the people were being found because these nurses had freedom, not just that they would have been found or released, but also that their culture would have been preserved. This was to me, the hope was more than just them staying alive. It was more than just survival that would have made this a happily ever after. For me, it was also the making sure that their culture survived, the meat of who a person is, right? Slightly irrelevant, but related to, I read that Maslow stole the hierarchy of needs from a tribe that lived nearby and twisted it and subverted it to fit Western culture. And it's like, so I'd seen that before I read the book, and it's like, yes, I want them all to survive, I want them all to live, but it was so important to me now that their culture survive, because that is part and parcel of who they are. I wanted them to find their own language. My mother always says that, your grandfather could speak 7 languages. I'm like, yes, mommy, but how many can you speak? And it's one. And it's not, that actually wasn't me being shady this time. That was me asking, like, well, maybe you could teach me some Hindi or some Urdu or whatever. And she's like, I can't speak none of them. And now I can't speak any of that. And anything I have learned from Bollywood. I can tell you how roti is pronounced, which is our food. I can say namaste because it's been said in the mainstream media by.
Well, I mean, it's also something that you say if you know any Hindu people that you go to any prayers,
right?
You get Sitaram, you get
I mostly heard Sitaram locally from my family because I have Hindu family as well. Mostly heard Sitaram, etc., but not Namaste. Namaste I heard mostly from mainstream culture. And I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing Spanish on Duolingo because, to have another language. I did do Spanish in school, but I should be trying to connect with my culture, with my language, and it's available on Duolingo,
I was now going to say, and look how the other language that looking to learn is another colonizer language, not...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's funny to that because my grandfather spoke 7 languages. My mother spoke 2. I speak 1. So language gets lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we all, and we talked about this when we spoke about Rivera a couple of weeks ago as well, something that we all recognize is how deeply language and culture are intertwined and how deeply language and identity are intertwined. And I feel like that's yet another thing about one of the many things that made me tearful about this book is that loss, right? And relating to that loss of language and that pain, right, of having that cut away from you. Kirsten in the chat says, I was just talking about this on Friday, that I learned a couple words from grandma watching her shows. Not even necessarily from grandma, but from watching the Indian TV shows that grandma was watching. And I relate to this as well. But it's another one of those things where I was just kind of like, and my mom makes a really good point here. She says, I wonder if a language you don't speak could be your language. And that's another really important question to ask, right? Like, but I think that it's fair to say that perhaps I have an ancestral language, even if it's not a language I speak anymore, right? Like there is a language that I have lost. Yeah. And there is a language that replaced it. But I think when we look at that in the way of acknowledging that culture and language are interconnected, we can acknowledge that the language that we've lost and the culture we've lost is and should be ours. Perhaps it's no longer ours, but it's for all of those same reasons that it's been taken from us, right? Or in my case, I ran away from it in many ways. And I think that that's something that quite a few of us have done for the purpose of assimilation, right? Kirsten says, and then there are people who got to have tutors. Yeah. To learn other languages, or the languages on TV.
I call it our grandmother tongue, because it's not something that we learn directly from our mother tongue, because for all of us our mother tongue is English. But our grandmother tongue is Hindi, it's French, it's Spanish.
That's exactly what my mother's saying here. She's saying that her maternal grandparents, which would be my great grandparents, I guess, spoke Bhojpuri, and her nana read and wrote Hindi as well. And he taught others, including at least one Pandit. Well, that's cool. Neo-Nogi. I know this has absolutely nothing to do with this book, which I obviously have not read. But there is a Korean movie where every character speaks the language of their ethnicity, and the language you pick only modifies the subtitles. I think it's pretty cool to have a movie with 10 different languages. And it's the first time I've seen this concept in a multicultural movie. That's pretty cool. You'll have to point me in the
Drop the name. Drop the name.
Yeah.
Drop the name of that.
My
that
pen is
movie.
ready.
Like, we want to know. We want to know.
What is this movie?
Yeah. Also, if there's anybody else who's been looking in the chats, because evidently there's been folks who are looking in the chats.
Okay.
Feel free to
Space sweepers.
Add to this. Feel free to leave comments and say things and talk about things. It's called Space Sweepers. It's an action movie and it's on Netflix. Awesome. I know what I'm doing with my evening. At least I hope it's available here. It may not be available here.
We will find it.
We'll find it.
We will watch it.
We will watch it. Yes. Cool. Use a VPN, he said. I guess I should try that, sure.
I'm not going to come on Lil Nas X internet to discuss how I'm going to be watching this.
Anyway, Anjali says, not only that, but the Bhojpuri we have is a language stuck at 200 to 300 years ago. Wow. And the actual current language, or the current Bhojpuri language, has evolved. And that's true. That's true. Speaking of dropping movies, there is Something in the Water by Elliot Page about the environmental racism in Canada. Watch Something in the Water. Okay, speaking of dropping movies, there is a movie called Something in the Water by Elliot Page about the environmental racism in Canada. Watched that too, and it hits really hard, especially after reading this book. Brendan says that Space Sweepers does not seem to be available in TNT. Well, Neo-Nogi, I guess I'm going to have to find my way around that.
He says it is not, or it does?
It is not. And Anjali says that she saw that. I'm guessing she means she saw Something in the Water, and it was really good. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not good at watching documentaries.
I love documentaries.
Oh, sorry. No, Brendan says it is available. I don't know how I misread that. Now that he says it, I'm going back to his other comment, and it's like, it does seem to be available.
I found it.
You're in America. Anyway, it's available here. It's available here, so we're good.
Let me have my privilege.
So I was saying I'm not good at watching documentaries, but a big part of why I'm not good at it is because I can't deal with reality.
Then don't watch Seaspiracy. Don't do it. But do it. But do it.
Yeah, like
that was very clear, Brie. I appreciate your clarity.
I'm just not. It takes me, and I've tried, right? It takes me a really long time to watch a documentary because the realities, it's like watching, like I even have trouble sometimes watching the news depending on what's in the news, because
I feel like we should have a documentary club where we can live stream after we watch documentaries.
I would probably be sobbing through the whole thing. Oh, Anjali says that There's Something in the Water is the name of the documentary, not Something in the Water. I got that. I guess I read that whole sentence. I've been doing that a lot lately, where I've been reading sentences and interpreting them completely wrong. I don't know. It's been something that's been happening a lot to me in the last couple of weeks in particular, and my brain is not undoing whatever it did to cause this. But yeah, like documentaries are just so much reality for me, and I can't live like that all the time. Like it's so much emotional labor for me. If I watch a documentary about something like real and heavy like this, I have to sleep for the rest of the day. That's to tell you how
the opposite with me. I can't after I've consumed that kind of media, I can't sleep.
Oh no, it's a drug sleep, to be clear.
Oh, okay. But because I have had postpartum anxiety since I had my first son. Right? I have to have the news filtered for me. If there's anything about a child like Rose dying, that was the worst one for me. Because it's so simple to grab a child. I should know I can grab 2 30 to 40 pound children at the same time and move them. And I'm not, no kind of upper body strength. And Rose dying was, I mean, for starters, her name is Rose. And the rose dies. And she dies so stupidly. You know what I mean? It's like, just go over by yourself. Why'd you have to take the child? And that was the worst part of it for me. For multiple reasons. And
are we talking about Rose or Riri?
I think Riri. My bad. Rose is not.
I had a moment when they were with Rose, and I was like, no, but it was Riri that died. Yeah,
Riri,
my bad. But it was.
Can you say that one more time? Sorry.
Oh, I just said it was Riri that got taken.
It was Riri, not Rose. So that was me not recollecting the characters appropriately.
It's cool. It's
and
honestly,
like I said,
this book clearly has us all fucked up. Like it's so fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean that's good art. Art's supposed to make you feel, and it's like, wow, I'm fucked. Yeah.
Well, we can all go
I'm feeling
fine after this.
I don't think I have any. I can fix that though.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix that.
Kirsten says that after watching There's Something in the Water, it really hit me hard about my privilege living in Canada, and that there are too many places to admit in Ontario alone that do not have clean drinking water and have not for so long. And people don't know because it's not in the news and it's just not talked about. My mother says I need sleep, I guess. I don't know. I do need sleep.
Yeah.
That's everybody knows that. Care and sleep always need. Sleepy bunny.
Anyway.
So we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. It's roughly 20 minutes to our 2-hour mark. Let's why don't we start with last thoughts, and maybe because I know that our last thoughts meander and we'll always end up dropping something else in. Maybe in 20 minutes we can get all 4 of us in there. I want to start with let's go. I'll go last. I'll go last. Let's start with Bree, and then just go clockwise.
Okay.
Hold on. Yeah, there you go.
I realized, I know it popped up. It's like, you're muted. I'm like, oh, great. So it's been a long journey, but I think, my main thoughts are, again, to drive home to our audience and anybody who may watch this after the fact, is I think us as humans need to be comfortable with discomfort. And I think that goes again to talk about how, Talia, you were reading the reviews, and as was I. And I was disappointed in the negative reviews because I think they were negative because the person failed to get the point. And so, again, I encourage, anybody out there to sit with your feelings. And if you feel discomfort, ask yourself, why? Why am I uncomfortable? And don't be afraid to look at yourself in the mirror, because it's difficult. But in the end, it's the work that makes us, more self-aware, more empathetic, and more human to other humans. And then again, another comment that was written about this book was, it didn't make sense about the bone marrow. Scientifically speaking, it made no sense, blah, 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 blah. And I know Kira's shaking her face because we're both molecular biologists. But at the end of the day, this was character driven. This wasn't plot driven. This wasn't about the marrow. It wasn't about how the marrow works. It wasn't about it wasn't even really about the dream specifically. It was about, we have something that the oppressors want and they want to get it. So it didn't matter how the marrow worked. It could have been anything. It could have been their,
Could have been eyeballs, like.
it could have been their land. It could have been their food. It didn't matter that it was their marrow, but the marrow made it more uncomfortable. It made it more visceral. And I think it was an author tactic, and I think it was well done. So again, this is just to counteract. I'm getting goosebumps again. Yay. Book club keeps giving us. You know, I want to challenge anybody who gave this book a 1 or 2 star review to think about it a little harder, because it wasn't about the marrow. It was much deeper than that. So that's my closing thoughts.
Thank you. Talia.
There were 2 quotes that jumped out at me. I have them written here. There's too many metaphors and story wrapped in stories. And it's like they couldn't even speak about what was going on. They couldn't even speak about their history directly. They literally had to commodify it, and they had to cushion it, and that sort of thing. And it's just all the emotional labor that BIPOC people have to go through just to share what belongs to them and who they are. And the second thing, pain drowned in forgotten packages, aka drugs. That was another snippet that, because a lot of communities were deliberately poisoned. We see that was happening in Flint, see that with the pipeline, we see that with, drugs and alcohol being promoted. We see it taking place in China with the opium, etc. And there's a lot of things that happened in this book that I could connect almost every little thing to something that already happened. And to me, this was like the BIPOC Game of Thrones, in a sense. It's all these like all these historical things that were taken and fictionalized and made to become this beautiful work of art. And I'm saying beautiful because, again, like you're talking about goosebumps. I had goosebumps right through. I had tears in my eyes. I had problems sleeping and so on. And like I was that disturbed. I was that disturbed as a mother. I was that disturbed as a woman where, who was it, Wab, who was raped and disfigured? It disturbed me again. Mother, brown woman. On so many levels, this book affected me. And I don't like the effect that it had on me. And I don't like it because it's too close to reality. There have been people that wanted to humble me. And they wanted to humble me not by being a better person than me, but by harming me directly. That was my literal experience. And I felt it too keenly. Right? I felt like if you're going to read this book as a brown person or as a BIPOC person, have your therapist on standby. Have somebody that you can call and vent on standby.
I wish I had known that I was starting to read.
Right?
You're so right.
And the thing is like, this book broke me. It broke me as a reader. It broke me as a writer as well. Because my book feels very surface level compared to this. And the found family that they had in that book, that was one of the comforting pieces to me. There's a level of love that Frenchie had for Migs, and like I appreciated that love there, that so that kind of cushioned some of the trauma. And I guess that is why when a lot of things are happening in the media right now that are bothering me because it's too close to home. But I recommend this book, not so much for teenagers, even older teenagers. And I recommend them sitting with it and sitting with somebody and reading this together, like in a book club, but talking about it and not just doing the whole book at once like we did. This book could have been done chapter by chapter and discussed accordingly, and we would have months of content. You know what I mean?
It deserves to be in literature classes all around the world.
It is?
No, I said it deserves to be.
It deserves to be, yeah.
I don't think it is, but it should be.
Right. And I see this, and this book is the worst possible outcome of cultural appropriation. And again, like you said, Brie, and not just us as brown women, but every single person that gave this book a bad review needs to sit with their feelings. Yeah, sit with your feelings, because the problem with the book is literally a you problem. Mr. and Miss 1-star reviewers, it's a you problem. I said what I said. Come find me on the internet and prove to me otherwise.
Cash me outside.
Catch me on Lil Nas X internet or Chloe Bennett's internet, whichever. I'm not fussy.
Wait, Chloe Bennett. I missed something. Chloe Bennett's internet.
I seen Chloe Bennett, and I'm sure I had the wrong name, the wrong
I
last
don't know.
name.
She's from
Chloe X Halley.
Marvel.
Chloe X Halley. Catch me on her internet. Right?
Kirsten says that she has teacher friends and she's gonna put a word in to slide it in there.
Yeah, and the best way to tell them is like, listen, we would love to put this book on the syllabus, but we're not allowed to. Okay, I read To Kill a Mockingbird because I was told it was banned. So have it banned and just accidentally leave it on your table, said to be stolen.
Mockingbird was literally on our literature syllabus when I was in secondary school.
I remember I'm a few years older than you, and it wasn't on our syllabus, but we were told that it was banned in another country. We were told that Americans banned it on their syllabus, and I made it my business at the age of 12 to go and find it and read it because it was banned. So you want teenagers to go read something, tell them it's banned.
Noted.
Yeah. So everybody should read it. Everybody should sit with their feelings and figure it out.
Okay. I guess that's you, Shay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
sorry. Kirsten says that in secondary school we read more Latin American books than through high school. Okay, just to make sure that the chat is included, because I know Kirsten couldn't be here on video, and Kirsten is part of book club. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Sorry. Kirsten, actually, if you want to type out your final thoughts too before I go, I'll read those. Shayna, sorry.
Okay. No, it's fine. And actually, like Kirsten, when I was going through public school, it was never lost on me just how little actual history about what's happened to Native Americans, and I feel like a lot of other cultures too, was never really included. And a really good example I've used forever now has been my particular tribe I'm from is the Navajo, and my high school textbook had literally one sentence about the Navajo people, and it was that we were sheep herders. And that bugs me to this day because, we are much more than that. And historically speaking, sheep herding is something that we took from the colonizers, honestly. But, that's why it is so important, I feel, to read books like this, to take into account the history and culture that, are not taught inside of our public school systems and other, education systems as well. And to me, I felt like more personally, the reason why I struggled with this book is because it touched on so many things that, I wish were talked about more. I wish that were, taught more and more people understood just the sheer impact that it has had to these cultures and these people, and why, people want to look at Native Americans in particular today, and, all they see are statistics. All they see are the impacts that drug and alcoholism has had on the people, on the poverty of the people. And, they don't take a second to ask themselves, well, why? Why are people so poor? Why are people so addicted to these substances? Why are, so many women and children still being abducted and killed and sold off to sex trades and things like that? It doesn't take long to figure out the why. And I think for me, it's actually really perfect that we're talking about this now, this weekend, because actually what we have going on and what this book kind of reminded me of at the end of it all especially when we had that larger coming together of all the different people, right? Is that this weekend here in Albuquerque and really across the whole like country, North America, is the Gathering of Nations. And that is the largest powwow in the world where we have representation from all different kinds of Native American tribes. And so I think it's a really good plug for them. If you guys don't know about it, they're doing it all virtual this weekend. And to me, sitting with my feelings on this book and sitting with, you know, the struggle that I had personally about all these different topics that were talked about, it made me go back and think about historically I come from, you know, a tribe of people that have had to persevere through so many different kinds of struggles. And so to me, at the end of this book, I felt like that because of our history, collective history as Native Americans, as, you know, minorities in different countries, all coming together, that we have ancestors that have persevered through so many things. And so to me, at the end of this book, I felt like, you know, because of our ancestors being able to persevere through those things, we, as the next generation, as the younger generation, it's up to us to continue persevering and continue preserving the cultures that we all come from. And that, to me, I felt at the end of this book, as much as I struggled, the gleaming silver of light at the end of all of this is that no matter what, we were still going to come together and we're going to find a way forward, because that's what we do. We have no other choice. And so what we all have to learn and take away, I feel like, from this book is that it is up to us to be more engaged with that and finding a way to connect with our collective histories and making sure that we continue on. And so that for me was my main takeaway from this book. And so I highly encourage everyone to go read it for sure.
Thank you. I definitely, I agree with that. That everyone should read this. I'm going to read what Kirsten's thrown in there. Kirsten, if you are still writing, if you're done, let me know so that I'm not waiting for more. But if you're still writing, let me just keep going. I'm going to read your final thoughts. Kirsten says, I loved that this book was so magical feeling from the cultural side of it, the storytelling, capital S, and the makeshift sweat lodge that they made. I hated that I cried every other sentence because it made me realize all the privileges I do have living here, where the book was set in Canada, and that nobody is talking about the larger issues tribes are facing here. The government gave an apology, in quotation marks, but it was empty. Yeah, it was empty. No clean drinking water. Oh, I just realized I didn't click the next one. So this is where she says that the government gave its apology. And she follows this where the government gave an apology, but it was empty. No clean drinking water in 2021 in what is considered a first world country. The system here doesn't want to own up to the problems they've caused and where it's going. And this book is foreshadowing what will happen all over again in one way or another. Absolutely, I agree. Kirsten says, I want to shout from the rooftops about this book. And again, I think she has something else to say. She says she thinks she's done, but then she says, I'm waiting. Wait. Okay, I'm going to wait. Oh God, I hope that you could just jump on the video next time. Now I'm gonna sit here. Oh, right. Also, Indigenous peoples are not considered Canadian citizens. And I think, Shay, that's true for the US as well, is it?
So we are considered citizens, but we were only given citizenship, I think, in the 20s, 1920s, like 1924, I want to say. But even though we had citizenship, we didn't have the right to vote until the 1970s.
Because I remember
Yeah.
We didn't quite talk about this when we spoke about Rabiera, but I remember you saying that about the ESL, that even though you were born in the US and not on the any reservations, that's or like anything considered indigenous property or indigenous land, but you were born in Arizona, I think you had said.
Yeah.
But they still were just like, English, you don't possibly speak English, right? That's Mushroom and her butt. And Kirsten adds, but is anybody talking about it? No, because it doesn't affect them. Shake my head. So I'm guessing she's shaking her head right now wherever she is. And BL is right, that the right to vote was later. And it is to be noted that it's not talked about that Indigenous peoples are not considered Canadian citizens in the book, but I think it is important to mention.
Out of mind. And I think things like this bring things to the forefront. And that's why books make people uncomfortable. But out of sight, out of mind can't happen anymore. We can't turn our eyes away from things that make us uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess if Kirsten pops up with anything else to say, I'll pull it up instead. But let me talk a little bit about my closing thoughts. As always, I've had the privilege of being able to read this book kind of from the perspective as a reader, from the perspective as a brown woman, from the perspective as the child of, multi-generation immigrants, right? Like 4th, 5th generation immigrant at this point. Someone who's also been feeling disconnected from her culture as a writer. Yeah. I've had the facts here since she's done. I've had the privilege of reading this as a writer. And something that's come up a lot for me in my training to become an agent and what I've been doing so far in my mentorship is it's become clearer and clearer to me the more I read through like queries and other people's science fiction ideas and their book proposals, essentially, or their queries. What I like in science fiction. And we talked earlier in this, in this little 2-hour period about, was this really science fiction? Because this is just reality as far as I'm concerned, right? This is the real world right now. But I also really understand on a visceral level why it was classified as science fiction beyond the dystopian setting, right? Beyond that setting, because science fiction, and in my opinion, even more so than fantasy, is the place where we give ourselves the opportunity to be the most uncomfortable. Science fiction, even more so than fantasy and other types of fiction, in my opinion, is the place where we get to explore what it means to be human, what humanity is, how humanity treats each other, how humanity treats other. Yeah. Science fiction, more than any other genre, in my opinion, is where this really happens, is where we interrogate who we are at our very cores, in, the very centers of our beings, of our everythings, of our souls, of our minds, of our cultures, of our, science fiction, I think, is the place for that more than any other genre that I've read in my life. Right. And I read so much. I love fantasy. I write fantasy. But even fantasy, I think, fails to do that in ways that science fiction does, because I perhaps believe that science fiction is often predicated on making assumptions based in real world issues and real world events and real world technologies. Yeah. So for all the Marrow doesn't work that way BS, even as a molecular biologist, I think that this was perhaps one of the greatest science fiction books I've ever read. It does everything that I think really good science fiction is supposed to do, right? It takes the realities of today and even the realities of yesterday and asks key, truly critical, potentially terrifying questions and forces us to face those answers in ways that we can't do in most other art and media. And this book blew me away. it blew me away. I like ugly cried. I happy cried. I didn't do a lot of yes, okay, mushroom. Hold on, we're almost done. And I think it was a brilliant book, and that's all I have to say. If you haven't read it, go read it. Go read it. And my mom agrees with me, so clearly I got my opinion from somewhere. That science fiction is the best opportunity to explore the difficult realities of being human and what are the boundaries. And I've got to agree with this 100%. Yeah.
So one more thing?
Yeah, go for it, Brie.
Cool. So this book also touched on one thing that was really scary. And then going for, sci-fi and looking at the future, there's, the old adage that says, if you don't learn your history, you're destined to repeat it. But that's to say that we can do better, right? So learn your history so we don't do genocide. We don't take over people's land. But this book had one line, and I don't want to look for it, but the recruiters looked at history to build the schools, to find a way. They use their history to repeat it on purpose. And that's giving me goosebumps, because I'm like, this book showed you that everything is a double-edged sword. And that
Absolutely.
It's a cautionary tale that if we don't get our stuff straight, and if we don't learn to respect our fellow human, it doesn't matter that it'll happen before, it's going to happen again, because it is happening again. And it's happening again, even in this book.
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely something I agree with. Go read this book, Olia. That's really the crux of the matter here. Go read this book, right? Cool. I'm gonna ask my other folks to stick around a little bit. Kirsten, I don't know if you're in a place where you could hop on to the video now, because I know you were a second ago. I just want to talk to you guys for a couple minutes, but I'm going to end the broadcast. Thank you all so much for watching, all who have been watching and all who will watch one day. And I hope you come back. The next time we're here, we will be reading, what are we reading next time, Olia? I think the next one is, oh, wait. Hold on, Nicola. Sorry, Talia, you were muted.
15 Dogs. That was
Kirsten's pick. By
Andrea
Alexis.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. My mom is still talking in the chat. She's saying, so what are the boundaries, or what the boundaries should be? It's why she focuses on SFF over other genres. And it's a reality because, hey, Trump learned from Hitler. Yikes. That's going to take us on another hour of discussion. We should end now, especially if I want to chat with you guys after. So I'm going to end the broadcast for reals. All right, Kirsten, jump on if you're in a position to do so. If not, we'll chat later. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. And
bye, Internet.
Goodbye, Internet.